The Awakening Pain. The Galactic Council thought humans were just another primitive species, violent, unpredictable, and too dangerous to trust. But when the ancient void serpents awakened from their million-year slumber, bringing pain and terror to every corner of the galaxy, it wasn't weapons or technology that saved them all. It was something the universe had never seen before. A human's gentle touch and the courage to heal what others feared to approach. Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped her hands on her blood-stained apron and stepped back from the examination table. The Alterian, crystal bear, lay unconscious, its rainbow-colored fur finally peaceful after hours of surgery. She had successfully removed the infected star shard from its paw, something the local physicians had declared impossible. But Elena had learned long ago that impossible was just another word for hasn't been tried with enough patience yet. Her small veterinary clinic on the mining station Kepler 442b wasn't much to look at. Cobbled together from spare ship parts and salvaged medical equipment, it served the forgotten creatures of the Outer Rim. While other humans chased glory in the core worlds, Elena had chosen to dedicate her life to healing the galaxy's most misunderstood beings. The communication console crackled to life, interrupting her post-surgery cleanup. The holographic display flickered, revealing the elegant features of Ambassador Kethvara of the Zephyrian Collective. Her crystalline skin was pale, and her usually composed demeanor showed cracks of barely contained panic. "Dr. Vasquez," the ambassador began, her melodic voice strained with urgency. "The Galactic Council requires your immediate assistance. We have a crisis unlike anything we've ever faced." Elena raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Council had never shown interest in her work before. In fact, most member species viewed humans as barely civilized warmongers, tolerated only because of their effectiveness in conflicts. The idea that they would seek her help seemed absurd. "What kind of crisis?" Elena asked, already reaching for her emergency kit. In her experience, when aliens called something a crisis, it usually meant something was dying, and dying things needed help immediately. Ambassador Kethvara's image flickered as interference crossed the transmission. 3 hours ago, dimensional rifts began opening across 17 star systems. Creatures are emerging from these rifts. Ancient beings we thought were myths. The void serpents have awakened. Elena's blood ran cold. Even in the Outer Rim, everyone knew the legends of the void serpents, massive creatures that dwelt between dimensions, capable of consuming entire stars. They were the boogeyman stories that kept spacers awake during long flights through dark space. "Our fleets engaged them immediately," the ambassador continued, her voice breaking slightly. 12 battle groups armed with our most advanced weapons, Doctor. They didn't even slow them down. The serpents tore through our defenses like they were made of paper. But something else is happening. Something we don't understand." The holographic display shifted, showing Elena grainy footage from a battlecruiser's external cameras. Massive, serpentine forms writhed through space, each one easily the size of a moon. Their scales seemed to absorb light itself, making them appear as moving voids against the stars. But as Elena watched, she noticed something the military analysts had missed. "They're not attacking randomly," Elena murmured, studying the creature's movements. "Look at their body language, the way they're coiling and uncoiling. They're in pain." Ambassador Kethvara's crystalline features shifted with confusion. "Pain? Doctor, these creatures have destroyed 6 space stations and consumed the atmosphere of 2 habitable worlds. They're monsters." Elena shook her head, her mind already racing through possibilities. "Monsters don't writhe like that. Monsters don't make those sounds." She had noticed it in the background audio, low, keening wails that reminded her of the crystal bear's cries during surgery. "Ambassador, I need to see more footage, everything you have." For the next hour, Elena studied video after video of the void serpent's emergence. The pattern became clearer with each recording. The creatures weren't attacking out of malice or hunger. Their movements were erratic, desperate. When they consumed atmospheric particles or energy from space stations, it seemed almost reflexive, like a wounded animal lashing out at anything that came near. "They're sick," Elena concluded, looking up at the ambassador's increasingly worried expression. These creatures have been sleeping between dimensions for eons. Something woke them up, and whatever it was, it's causing them tremendous suffering. Ambassador. Kethavara's skin shifted to a deeper blue, a sign of extreme distress among her people. Even if that's true, Doctor, what can we do? Our weapons can't harm them, and they're heading toward the populated core systems. At their current speed, they'll reach Centauri Prime in 18 hours. Elena was already moving, gathering her equipment and emergency supplies. Years of treating dangerous alien creatures had taught her to pack quickly and think even faster. How many species are represented on the Galactic Council? She asked, stuffing her portable scanner into her medical bag. 47 member species, the ambassador replied, clearly confused by the sudden topic change. And how many of those species have tried violence as their first solution to this problem? All of them, Kethavara admitted quietly. Elena smiled, grimly as she sealed her emergency kit. Then maybe it's time to try something different, something human. The ambassador's crystalline features showed a mixture of hope and desperation. What are you proposing, Doctor? I'm proposing we stop trying to fight them and start trying to heal them, Elena replied, shouldering her bag. But I'll need a ship, the fastest one you can provide. And I'll need permission to approach one of these creatures without interference from your military forces. Ambassador Kethavara was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through various shades of blue and purple as she processed the request. Finally, she spoke. Doctor, you understand that this plan could result in your death? These creatures are larger than most space stations. If you're wrong about their intentions. Elena thought of the crystal bear, now sleeping peacefully in her clinic's recovery ward. Everyone had told her it was too dangerous to treat, too aggressive to approach, but underneath its fierce exterior had been a frightened animal in pain, desperate for someone to help. Ambassador, in my experience, there's no such thing as a monster, Elena said softly. There are only creatures that haven't been understood yet. If these void serpents are truly in pain, then they deserve the same compassion we'd show any suffering being. The transmission crackled as Ambassador Kethavara processed the request through official channels. When she returned, her expression had changed from desperation to something resembling hope. The Council has voted, she announced. You'll have the fastest ship in our fleet, the Stellar Wind. Captain Zorith is one of our best pilots, and he's agreed to take you to the nearest rift site. But, Doctor, the moment things go wrong, he has orders to retreat. Elena nodded, already heading toward her clinic's landing pad. Understood. Tell Captain Zorith to prepare for a medical mission, not a military one. And Ambassador, make sure all military forces maintain their distance. If I'm right about these creatures being in pain, the last thing they need is more reasons to feel threatened. As Elena's small shuttle lifted off from Kepler 442b, she watched her clinic shrink into the distance through the viewport. Somewhere, in the darkness between stars, ancient creatures writhed in agony, and the entire galaxy cowered in fear. But Elena had learned long ago that fear was often just misunderstanding in disguise. The journey to the rendezvous point with the Stellar Wind took 6 hours. During that time, Elena reviewed everything she knew about interdimensional biology and theoretical xenocreature medicine. The void serpents were unlike anything she'd ever treated, but the principles remained the same. Find the source of pain, treat the symptoms, and always approach with compassion rather than force. When the Stellar Wind appeared on her sensors, Elena felt a familiar mixture of nervousness and excitement. This was what she lived for, the moment when everything she'd learned would be put to the ultimate test. The ship was sleek and fast, built for reconnaissance rather than combat. Captain Zorith's voice crackled over the communication system as Elena's shuttle docked. Dr. Vasquez, I hope you know what you're doing, the captain said, his voice betraying his anxiety. We'll be approaching the rift in 1 hour. The nearest void serpent is approximately 30 kilometers long and showing signs of extreme agitation. Elena secured her equipment in the ship's medical bay and made her way to the bridge. Captain Zorith was a tall insectoid being with multiple arms that moved with practiced efficiency across his control panels. His compound eyes reflected the light from the navigation displays as he plotted their approach vector. "Captain, I need you to understand something," Elena said, checking her portable scanner one final time. "When we approach that creature, we're not going to act like predators or threats. We're going to approach like healers. That means slow movements, non-aggressive posturing, and absolutely no sudden changes in speed or direction." Captain Zorith's antennae twitched nervously. "Doctor, with respect, this creature could swallow our entire ship without noticing. Are you certain about this approach?" Elena thought of every frightened animal she'd ever treated, from the smallest space mice to the largest crystal bears. The principles never changed, regardless of size. "Captain, pain makes every creature dangerous, but it also makes them desperate for relief. If we can show these beings that we're here to help rather than harm, they might let us close enough to figure out what's wrong." The stellar wind dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, and Elena got her first direct look at a void serpent. The creature was even more magnificent and terrifying than the footage had suggested. Its scales seemed to absorb light itself, creating a serpentine shadow against the stars. But as Elena watched through the bridge's main viewport, she saw what the military analysts had missed. The creature was shuddering. Its massive body convulsed with waves of what could only be described as spasms, and from its throat came sounds that Elena recognized immediately, the universal language of suffering. "There," she whispered, pointing at the creature's movements. "Do you see it, Captain? The way it's coiling and uncoiling? That's not aggressive behavior. That's a pain response." Captain Zorith studied the readings on his sensors, his compound eyes reflecting the data streams. "Doctor, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from within the creature's body, something that doesn't match its natural biosignature." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown. But they appear to be parasitic in nature, drawing energy from the creature's life force while generating some kind of dimensional interference." The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place in Elena's mind. "That's it," she breathed. "That's why they woke up. Something's infected them while they slept. Interdimensional parasites that are feeding on their energy and causing the rifts to destabilize." As if sensing their presence, the massive void serpent turned its attention toward the stellar wind. Elena felt Captain Zorith tense beside her, his hands moving toward the emergency jump controls. But Elena placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Wait," she said softly. "Look at its eyes." The creature's eyes were enormous, each one larger than their entire ship. But within those cosmic depths, Elena saw something that made her heart ache with recognition, fear, pain, and something else that she'd seen countless times in her clinic: hope. The void serpent wasn't looking at them as prey or threats. It was looking at them the same way every injured animal had ever looked at her when she approached with healing intentions. It was asking for help in the only way it knew how. Elena took a deep breath and activated the ship's external communication system. She knew the creature probably couldn't understand her words, but tone and intention were universal languages among living beings. "Hello, beautiful one," she said softly, her voice broadcasting into the void. "We're here to help. We know you're in pain, and we want to make it better." The void serpent's massive head tilted slightly, and its anguished cries softened to something almost like curiosity. Captain Zorith watched in amazement as the creature's aggressive posturing relaxed, its coils loosening slightly. "Captain," Elena said, never taking her eyes off the magnificent being before them. "Take us closer, slowly and gently. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do best." "And what's that, Doctor?" Elena smiled, her hands already reaching for her medical equipment. "We heal." The healing touch. The stellar wind glided through space like a whisper, its engines barely humming as Captain Zorith maneuvered closer to the massive void serpent. Elena stood at the bridge's observation deck, her medical scanner in hand, watching, as the creature's cosmic form grew larger with each passing moment. What had seemed impossible from a distance now revealed intricate details that took her breath away. The serpent's scales weren't simply black as they'd appeared in the military footage. They were crystalline structures that bent light and space. Around them, creating patterns of impossible beauty. But marring this magnificence were patches of diseased tissue that pulsed with sickly energy, like infected wounds that spread across dimensions themselves. "Doctor," Captain Zorith called from his control station, his voice tight with concern. "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the creature. Whatever's inside it is becoming more active." Elena nodded, her scanner picking up the same readings. The parasitic entities were feeding more aggressively, probably triggered by the serpent's emotional response to their approach. She could see the creature struggling, its massive body convulsing as it fought against the invaders that were literally eating it from the inside out. "We need to work faster," Elena murmured, checking her equipment one final time. "Captain, can you position us near one of the infected areas? I need to get close enough for a proper examination." The insectoid pilot's antennae twitched nervously, but he complied, adjusting their trajectory toward a section of the serpent's flank where the parasitic infection was most visible. As they drew closer, Elena could see the dimensional distortions more clearly. The parasites weren't just feeding on the creature's energy. They were using it to punch holes between realities, destabilizing the very fabric of space-time. "That's why the rifts are opening," Elena realized aloud. "These parasites are interdimensional in nature. They're using the serpents as living batteries to power their invasion of our reality." Captain Zorith's compound eyes reflected the scanner data streaming across his displays. "Doctor, if that's true, then killing the parasites might close the rifts. But how do you treat a patient that's larger than most moons?" Helena smiled grimly, remembering her early days treating crystal bears and other massive creatures. "The same way you treat any patient, Captain, with patience, skill, and a lot of courage." She activated the ship's external communication array, again keeping her voice gentle and reassuring. "Easy now, beautiful one. We're going to help you feel better. I know it hurts, but we're here now." The void serpent's enormous eye turned toward their small ship, and Elena gasped at what she saw reflected in its cosmic depths. Intelligence. Not the primitive awareness of a wild animal, but the deep, ancient wisdom of a being that had existed since the dawn of galaxies. This wasn't just a creature in pain. It was a sapient being that had been suffering in silence for who knew how long. "You understand, don't you?" Elena whispered, pressing her hand against the viewport. "You know we're trying to help." The serpent's response was immediate and overwhelming. Elena felt a presence touch her mind, not invasive or threatening, but gentle as a summer breeze. Images flooded her consciousness, the long sleep between dimensions, the peaceful dreams of cosmic harmony, and then the sudden agony as something foreign and hungry began feeding on their essence. The parasites weren't native to the serpent's dimension. They were invaders that had somehow breached the barriers between realities, infecting the sleeping giants and using their dimensional abilities to spread further into normal space. The serpents hadn't awakened to attack anyone. They had awakened because they were dying. "Captain," Elena said, her voice filled with newfound urgency, "we need to get me onto the creature's surface. The infection is too deep for external treatment." Captain Zorith's entire body went rigid with shock. "Doctor, you want a spacewalk onto a creature that's larger than a space station? The radiation alone would kill most beings instantly." Elena was already suiting up in the ship's emergency environmental gear, her mind racing through treatment protocols. "Most beings, yes. But humans have something the rest of the galaxy doesn't understand yet. We adapt. We survive. And most importantly, we don't give up when someone needs our help." The environmental suit was bulky and awkward, designed for emergencies rather than medical procedures. But Elena had worked in worse conditions. She secured her portable medical kit to her suit's utility belt and checked the power levels on her scanner and treatment tools. "The creature's natural energy field should protect me from the worst of the radiation," Elena explained as she prepared to exit the ship. "And if I'm right about these parasites, they're what's causing most of the dangerous emissions." Captain Zorith watched helplessly as Elena entered the ship's small airlock. "Doctor, how will you even begin to treat something so massive? The infected areas alone are kilometers wide." Elena paused at the airlock controls and smiled. "Captain, every journey begins with a single step. Every healing begins with a single touch. Size doesn't matter when you're dealing with the universal language of care and compassion. The airlock cycled open, and Elena found herself floating in the vast emptiness of space, the void serpent's enormous form stretching out before her like a living landscape. Up close, the creature's beauty was even more breathtaking. Its scales reflected not just light, but entire spectrums of energy that painted aurora patterns across its hide. Elena activated her suit's maneuvering thrusters and carefully approached one of the infected areas. The parasites were visible now as writhing, tentacle-like masses that had burrowed deep into the serpent's flesh. They pulsed with a sickly energy that made Elena's scanner readings spike into dangerous territory. "Okay, beautiful one," Elena murmured, knowing the creature could hear her through its telepathic connection. "This is going to hurt at first, but then you'll feel so much better." She activated her medical tools, specially modified for use in space environments. The first parasite she approached was about the size of her shuttle. Its tentacles wrapped around what appeared to be nerve clusters in the serpent's hide. Elena had never seen anything like it, but the principles of parasitic removal remained, the same regardless of scale. Working carefully, Elena began to separate the parasite from its host. The creature screamed, not audibly but telepathically, sending waves of agony through Elena's mind that made her vision blur. But she pressed on, using techniques she'd learned from years of treating infected crystal bears and other creatures with similar symbiotic parasites. The key was patience. Each tentacle had to be carefully detached without damaging the host tissue. Elena worked with the precision of a surgeon and the gentleness of a mother caring for a sick child. Hours passed as she methodically freed the serpent from its tormentors, one parasite at a time. As the first major parasite cluster was removed, something miraculous happened. The dimensional rifts in that area began to stabilize, their chaotic energy patterns smoothing into harmless fluctuations. The serpent's anguished cries turned to something resembling relief, and Elena felt waves of gratitude washing over her telepathic connection with the ancient being. "That's it," Elena whispered, moving to the next infected area. "We're making progress, you're going to be okay." But as she worked, Elena realized the true scope of the problem. There were dozens of major infection sites across the serpent's massive body, and each one would require hours of careful treatment. At her current pace, it would take days to heal even one creature, and there were reports of 17 serpents across multiple star systems. Elena paused in her work, floating in the cosmic void beside her patient, and considered the problem. She was just one human with basic medical equipment, trying to heal beings the size of moons. It seemed impossible, hopeless even. But then she felt something that changed everything. Other presences touched her mind. Not just the serpent she was treating, but others, distant voices calling across the dimensional barriers. The void serpents were communicating with each other, sharing Elena's healing techniques through their psychic network. What she was learning here on this one creature was being transmitted instantly to every other infected serpent in the galaxy. "You're teaching each other," Elena realized with wonder. "You're sharing the healing process so you can help yourselves." The serpent's massive eye turned toward her, and Elena felt its ancient amusement at her surprise. These beings had survived for millions of years by sharing knowledge and supporting each other. They had simply been waiting for someone to show them how to fight the parasites that had invaded their dimensional sanctuary. Working with renewed energy, Elena developed a more efficient treatment protocol. Instead of removing entire parasites by herself, she focused on severing their connection to the serpent's nervous system, effectively lobotomizing the invaders. The serpents could then use their own immune systems to expel the dead parasites naturally. As each treatment technique was perfected, Elena felt it being shared across the psychic network to every other infected serpent. Within hours, creatures across 17 star systems were beginning to heal themselves using the methods Elena had developed. The dimensional rifts started closing as the parasites lost their power sources. But the most remarkable thing was yet to come. As the serpents healed, they didn't retreat back to their dimensional hiding places. Instead, they lingered in normal space, their massive forms creating a protective barrier around inhabited worlds. They had become guardians, using their newfound health to shield the galaxy that had shown them compassion. Elena floated in space beside her patient, exhausted but triumphant, as she watched the last parasites being expelled from the serpent system. The creature's scales now shone with their natural beauty, free from the sickly distortions that had marred them before. Its telepathic voice filled her mind with warmth and gratitude that brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," Elena whispered, placing her gloved hand against the creature's massive flank. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for showing the galaxy what's possible when we choose healing over harm." The serpent's response was a flood of images and emotions. Elena saw the ancient history of these beings, their role as dimensional shepherds who maintained the stability between realities. She saw their long sleep and the terror of their infection, and she saw something that filled her with hope for the future: the serpent's desire to work with other species as partners rather than remain hidden in the dimensional depths. When Elena finally returned to the stellar wind, she found Captain Zorith monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The reports were consistent. Every void serpent had been successfully treated using the techniques Elena had pioneered. The dimensional rifts were sealed, and the ancient guardians had taken up protective positions around major population centers. "Doctor," Captain Zorith said, his voice filled with awe, "the Galactic Council is calling. They want to speak with you immediately." Elena smiled wearily as she removed her environmental suit. "Tell them I'll be right there, Captain. But first, I need to update my treatment protocols. Something tells me the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place for a veterinarian." The holographic display in the ship's communication center showed representatives from all 47 member species of the Galactic Council. Their expressions ranged from amazement to humility, and Elena noticed that many of them were looking at her with a new kind of respect. Ambassador Kethavara spoke for the group, her crystalline features glowing with gratitude. "Dr. Vasquez, on behalf of the entire Galactic Council, we want to thank you for saving not just our worlds but our understanding of what it means to be truly civilized." Helena felt embarrassed by the attention. "I just did what any good doctor would do, Ambassador. I treated patients who were in pain." "But that's exactly the point," interjected Commander Threshek of the Martonian military caste, his scaled features unusually subdued. "Where we saw monsters to be destroyed, you saw patients to be healed. Where we brought weapons, you brought compassion. It's a lesson my people won't soon forget." Other representatives nodded in agreement, and Elena realized that something fundamental had shifted in how the galaxy viewed humanity. They were no longer seen as just another warrior species, but as healers and protectors with a unique ability to find compassion where others saw only fear. "Doctor," Ambassador Kethavara continued, "the Council has voted unanimously to establish a new position, interdimensional veterinarian, with full diplomatic immunity and unlimited resources for research and treatment. The Void Serpents have expressed their desire to work with you as partners in maintaining dimensional stability." Elena looked out at the stars, where massive serpentine forms could be seen gliding gracefully between worlds, their presence now a comfort rather than a threat. She thought of her small clinic on Kepler 442b, and all the creatures still out there who needed help and understanding. "I accept," Elena said simply, "but I have one condition. This can't be just about me. We need to establish healing centers throughout the galaxy, staffed by beings from every species who share the vision of treating others with compassion instead of fear." The Council representatives exchanged glances, and Elena saw something she'd never expected to see in an official galactic proceeding: unanimous smiles. "Dr. Vasquez," Ambassador Kethavara said, her voice filled with warmth, "I think we're going to learn a great deal from humanity in the years to come." As the transmission ended, Elena stood alone on the bridge of the stellar wind, watching the Void Serpents gracefully patrol the space lanes like gentle giants keeping watch over sleeping children. She had come here to heal one creature in pain, but instead had helped heal the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be strong. The greatest power wasn't in weapons or technology, or the ability to destroy. The greatest power was in gentle hands, compassionate hearts, and the courage to reach out to help someone in need, no matter how different they might appear. Elena smiled and began planning her next mission. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, there were probably other creatures in need of healing, waiting for someone brave enough to see past their frightening exterior to the pain beneath. And now the galaxy knew where to find her.